Hello, and welcome to the Perpetual Motion podcast, where today we're discussing the global epidemic no one is talking about. I'm your host, Dr. Mo Anderson. My special guest today, Duncan Bhaskaran Brown, the man who wants sobriety to become the new normal. Duncan says eliminating your consumption of booze will increase your energy, power up your productivity, improve your relationships, and bring your sexy back. Welcome, Duncan.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Mo. I'm looking forward to chatting, although I fear you've built me up a little bit and I've got to be quite sexy today. It's a worry.
That was my intention. So you bring it and support that well-deserved introduction. I know you will. Let's start with your story, Duncan. How did you recognize you were overindulging in alcohol? Why was it important? And what made you change your lifestyle?
So, these things, they come to a head, but ultimately it was a good 20 years of drinking too much, eating junk food, smoking, just living a terrible life. And, it got progressively worse and worse, but it all sort of like reached that point around about the time my wife and I decided to start a family. And we were doing pretty well for ourselves. We were fairly successful. I was mayor of my hometown at a disturbingly young age. She had a job. We had a nice place. We were proper adults and everything. So it seemed natural to start a family, and that was quite good fun. Well, I mean, the trying bit was quite good fun. And as soon as my wife got pregnant, we turned into that stupid couple, that they're so naive. They're just grinning all the time. They've just got no idea what they've let themselves in for. That was absolutely us. And it was all amazing until my wife had a miscarriage. And all of a sudden, it wasn't amazing. In fact,
Right.
it was the very opposite. And of course, that was incredibly hard on her, took an emotional, physical, mental toll on her. But what made it worse was I wasn't there for her. My default reaction to difficult times, to hard emotions, was always just to pour myself into a bottle of wine. And that's what I did. I just, sat on my own and drank a lot and kind of pretty much ignored her. And obviously that didn't go particularly well. So what kind of happened was over the period of a couple of months, really, it made me sort of, start to ask some difficult questions. And what am I doing with my life? What is the point of Duncan? And I never got to the point where I was staring in the mirror at 4 a.m. and it was moodily lit, like the way it's always supposed to go like that, isn't it? But I look back on it now and I realize I was asking myself one very simple question. Duncan, what do you want? Do you want another drink? Or do you want a family? And of course, the good news is I made the right decision. And almost 9 months to the day after I stopped drinking, our daughter was born, which was fantastic. Well, for about 10 minutes. And then, it was a whole world of problems. But those are different problems. Those are good problems,
Those are
right?
parenthood problems, right?
Yeah.
So, well, you know what? That you had some serious self-awareness there, because there are people who, even though they recognize that the drinking is causing issues for them, impacting them professionally and personally, they just continue self-medicating to numb themselves, not willing to do the work. So kudos to you for being able to do that on your own. So as I'm understanding it, you didn't go to Alcoholics Anonymous or any type of program. You were able to do this on your own, right?
Yes and no. I mean, I didn't go to a group program like AA or Smart Recovery or anything like that. But I did have quite a lot of help. I mean, I don't want to sort of paint myself completely as a hero. I'm very lucky that I have a good family around me. My wife, she's stuck by me despite it all. Very close relationship to my parents.
Yay
I've got
for
a lot of
wifey.
great friends. I'm very involved in my community. So I had a lot of support in that sense. and I think I was lucky that I stopped smoking using Alan Carr's Easy Way to Stop Smoking, the book.
Mhm,
And well, frankly, I found it easy. I think that's probably why they call it that, isn't it? So
mhm,
when it came to stopping drinking, all I really did was apply what I'd learned from that book to alcohol, and there's a lot of similarities. And now I know that that's a process called cognitive realignment,
mhm,
and it's very, very effective and very, very powerful. And you can look at Andy Dufresne in The Shawshank Redemption, and you can say,
mhm.
well, he got out of prison, didn't he? And he did. He got himself out of prison by digging a hole with a teaspoon.
Literally
Took him
dug
8 years.
himself out
Yeah,
1 teaspoon at a time,
one
yeah.
teaspoon at a time. Took him 8 years. He had to crawl through the sewers to get there, and that is one way of getting out of prison. But actually, it's much easier to get out of prison by just unlocking the door.
Mhm.
So for me, I think a lot of these things they are just much easier if you have the key. You can do it the hard way, but you end up covered in, well, yeah. This is a polite podcast, so I won't say what you end up covered in. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was lucky. I had a lot of support, and found the right method.
Exactly, exactly, and I asked that question because, of course, there are people out there trying, and they just can't do it on their own, and it's helps to have support, to have a tribe, to have a method, if you're not able to just cold turkey do it on your own. There are resources, you don't have to do it on your own,
Yeah,
and
and
go ahead.
I think it's important to note as well that not every method works for every person. There's no such
Mhm,
thing as a perfect method. But my view is that anybody who isn't successful, it's not down to them. It is down to the method not working for them. And I think what we need to do as a community is actually make people aware that there are more routes to finding sobriety, and that if you haven't been successful with one of them, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It just means you haven't found the right method yet. So go out there and try some other ones. And as you say, there are a lot of resources out there, and there are a lot of people out there that want to help you.
right, right, and I'm gonna veer off just for a second before we get back to the topic at hand, because I'm thinking now some of our listeners are wondering about your lovely accent and where you were mayor of your hometown at an insanely young age. Would you mind sharing that with us?
Not at all, not at all. So I live in a town called Abingdon, which is just outside Oxford. I normally tell people I'm from Oxford for two reasons. One, because everyone's heard of Oxford because it has this little university. And
Mhm.
two, what I've noticed is that if you say you're from Oxford, people think you're really clever.
Understood. I live in a small, bedroom community, not small, good size, but it's a bedroom community in the Dallas-Fort Worth area of Texas, and I say Dallas because people think you're more cosmopolitan, and everybody knows Dallas, so
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I even have opinions on the Cowboys, so
there you go. There you go. We will stay away from that, and, uh
probably for the best.
probably for the best, and get back to the topic at hand, which is making sober normal, that sober lifestyle. And toward that end, why do you think alcohol consumption and binge drinking have become such prevalent issues in professional environments, particularly?
I mean, I don't. The simple answer is that they always have been. I mean, it's
Right?
just it hasn't gone away. Alcohol is so ingrained in our society, we don't even really notice how prevalent it is within the business community. We don't sort of think twice about the fact that, of course we're going to go for drinks.
Mhm.
And that may at some point in life have been appropriate, but I don't think it's appropriate anymore to have staff parties or work celebrations that are simply based around alcohol, because there's just so many people now that choose not to drink for reasons of religion, for reasons of ethnicity, for reasons related to their age, their
Mhm.
gender,
Health.
lots and
Yeah.
lots of different things. And choosing sobriety because you had a drinking problem is one of them, but it's by no means the biggest one. In fact, I mean, I think one of the reasons why alcohol and business go hand in hand is because a lot of business historically has been conducted by older white men. And if you
Mhm.
look at the statistics, men drink more than women, white people drink more than other ethnicities, and the older you are, the more you tend to drink. So if you're an old white male, you are quite likely to be quite keen on having a drink. And, if you're setting the agenda, then that's the agenda that people are going to follow. And it's particularly dangerous for other groups who are more susceptible to getting into problems because they see the leaders of their organization and they see them drinking and they see them glorifying alcohol and equating success to
Right.
alcohol. And, they go down the same path, don't they?
Right, right, and you're right, it's very prevalent as I think about the legal and medical dramas that I'm prone to watch. It's like every good thing that happens, they have a drink. Every bad thing that happens, they have a drink. And the other thing I see is that now that all of a sudden they're adding flavors to the alcohol and all of these celebrities have wineries and bourbon and cognac they're promoting, that makes it even more appealing for those, who are influenced by influencers. So it's probably going to get worse before it gets better if we don't, you know, put out this call to action that you're doing. So I'm wondering, can you explain the impact of excessive alcohol consumption on work productivity and overall job performance?
Yeah, I mean, I think most people kind of have got a bit of an idea about what drinking a huge amount is going to do to your productivity. And that's why we sort of typically imagine that people with drinking problems don't have jobs, but that's not true. Over 80% of people with drinking issues are employed.
Mhm.
And I think that's there's a lot of people that seem to be getting away with it, and that's why one of the reasons I think why we minimize it. But if you actually just look at the science, the body of evidence is really growing about how what most people would consider to be moderate drinking really does have an effect. So if
Mhm.
you take the idea of drinking just 2 glasses of wine, 2 beers, something like that, just 2 drinks, which most people would think of as not being a huge amount. Most people would think that doesn't really have any effect on you. But the simple fact is that 2 drinks is enough to reduce the quality of your sleep by 24%. And that's the deep sleep. That's the really, important
The
sleep
REM sleep,
that's
yeah.
restorative and helps with your memory, helps with your learning. Those same 2 drinks are going to increase your cortisol level by about 18%, something like that, which is, of course, I'm sure many of your listeners are aware that cortisol is the stress hormone, which
Mhm.
makes it slightly ironic if you believe that alcohol is helping you deal with stress when all the time it's increasing your cortisol level. And you can go on and on and on. There's huge numbers of studies about how drinking small amounts will reduce your brain volume over time, how drinking, actually, there was a study done recently where they had people drink, and it was just a couple of drinks. It was 2 days after they'd learned something, and it still reduced their recall of that information. So if you work with your mind in any way, then yeah, absolutely. Even a small amount of alcohol is going to be having an impact on your productivity, your performance.
Wow, and for boomers like me, I'm constantly having conversations with friends about, forgetting things, whether it's in the middle of my sentence or where I left something, which we're attributing to just aging, stress, overwork. We've got to factor in then alcohol consumption. I mean, those statistics and examples you just gave are eye opening. I really had no idea about that. Um, what about, is there an economic impact? I thought I saw something on your profiles, either nationally or individually, how it impacts people when they are, living the lifestyle of the turn up.
Yeah, so alcohol has a huge impact on our economy, and this research has been repeated across many different countries, across many different economies, and the same thing you find over and over again. Yes, alcohol is taxed, so it generates revenue, but that is far outweighed by the cost to the economy.
Mhm.
So there's sort of kind of three main costs to the economy. There's obviously health and social care. There's all of the people that end up in hospital because of drinking,
Mhm.
either directly or indirectly. Then there's kind of your policing. Alcohol causes a lot of domestic violence. It's related to a lot of crime. About 50% of murders are related to alcohol.
Oh my.
It has a huge cost in terms of policing. But both of those two, which are usually pretty large numbers, end up being dwarfed by the cost to business in terms of lost productivity.
Mm.
So if we look at the costs to the American economy last year, it probably would have been somewhere in the region of $400 billion,
Oh my
which
goodness.
is about the size of Apple. So we're not talking small change. And that
No.
is simply in terms of lost productivity. That doesn't, take into account any of the, cost to the healthcare or policing or, those other kind of social costs.
Right. And you know, taking from what you said, as I think about it, also absenteeism. We know it's really big after the Super Bowl and major sporting events that, that following Monday or whatever, half of your team is not showing up. And if they are not in very good shape. They're just quiet quitting there for the day.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, those are, I think, probably the more obvious examples. And I
Mhm.
think if you look at the research, around 40% of people have been quite aware of working at some point with a colleague who is obviously hungover, obviously the worse for wear, or possibly even drunk.
Right.
So yeah, those are the obvious ones. But actually, if you really get down to it, you think about 13.5% of the highest earners drink every day, which means every day they're coming into work that little bit below par.
Mhm.
Their empathy is down a little bit. Their ability to, build and forge new relationships is down a little bit. Their concentration's a bit off. Their energy's a bit off. That adds up.
It does, it does. I never thought about the impact on, personality and communication. That's a good point that you made. So, I know you work with, people who, want to change their lives such as you have, and I'm wondering as they come to you or talk to you, you do workshops, what are some common misconceptions about alcohol use that you encounter in your work, Duncan?
So it's a bit like Lord of the Rings, isn't it? There's one ring to rule them all. There's one misconception that sits on top of all of them, and that is that most of the people that I meet, they don't believe they can make their life work without alcohol.
Oh
And
my.
frankly, I get that. I was absolutely did not believe that I could deal with stress, that I could socialize, that I could make friends, that I could
Mhm.
concentrate, that I could be creative. Just couldn't believe that I could do all of those things without alcohol. So yeah, they all kind of come back to that. Very common is people believe it helps them to deal with stress, and that or is almost funny some of the time. I will literally spend 45 minutes listening to somebody telling me, how much trouble alcohol is causing them,
Mhm.
how much of an impact it's having on their relationships, their employment,
Right, right.
the way they feel. And then I'll ask them why they do it. And they go, oh, it helps me de stress. Well, obviously not. But then again, people believe it makes you look glamorous. You can't socialize. Definitely can't watch sporting events without
Mhm.
alcohol. So yeah, those are the world of misconceptions. I would call them illusions of truth.
Okay. Okay. What about what I see is, and I have sons in their 30s, I have grandkids. One is a teen now, just started high school. And one of the big factors here is peer pressure. So you're trying not to be that guy or that girl, but you're with the group and it's strong. I've been, it's happened to me and I've seen it with others. Come on, you're being a party poop. Just have one drink. How would you tell people to deal with situations like that when friends are pressuring them to have a drink? I mean, I'm very strong and assertive. I can just say, "Look, no, I'm having tea today. That's what's happening." But not everyone has that type of personality. So how do you push back without being pushy or mean or cursing them out? How do you do that?
I mean, this is something that I spend a lot of time talking and working with people on, particularly after they've stopped drinking, uh,
Mhm.
because they're worried about spending time with people who are going to be saying, "Oh, go on, come on, have a drink," because it's kind of common, isn't it? So
Yes.
I think the most important thing to do to do first is really learn to be able to say no to yourself. Because
Mm.
if you can say no to yourself, then actually it's quite easy to say no to other people. I mean, if you don't want to do something, it's generally not that hard to not do it,
Mhm.
irrespective of what other people are saying. I mean, if
True.
everybody was saying, "Oh, come on, let's go out and do some cocaine," you'd just be like, "Oh, I think it's time to
Right.
get some new friends, wouldn't you?"
Yeah.
And that's the kind of the place I think it really helps people to get to is to
Mhm.
sort of see cocaine and alcohol as the same thing. They're just stuff that I don't want to do. So it doesn't really matter so much what other people do, because they're comfortable and happy in themselves. And then there are a lot of techniques to get through the inevitable. Oh, go on, have a drink. I mean. Like sometimes, if I'm being a bit facetious, I would just call them social skills. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, what I have found is that if you politely refuse, most people will just move on. They're not that bothered.
No, not
They
over
they
here. Mm-mm.
all right,
They will
okay.
not they will not move on, I'm telling you, I've seen it. It
If they
maybe
don't, then
maybe it's a Southern thing or I don't know, but they will not, and they just keep pounding you. That's why I'm asking for some strategies
okay. So
because
what I would say is, I think there are a few people that are like that. We just kind of tend to think it's more people than it actually is because they're louder. Because the
uh,
people that don't ask you, you don't even like notice, and the people that just go, "Oh, okay," you kind of forget about. But it's the ones that are loud, and I get that it can be a problem. I mean, we use lots and lots of different techniques. Just about my favorite one is the old compliment and distract kind of thing. That's when you say, "Oh, I'm glad you're here. I really admire your opinion about football. Who do you think should be playing quarterback for the
okay.
Cowboys this season?" And then they will forget about the drink and they will talk to you for 45 minutes, won't they? And,
You're right, that's
that's
good.
it. So yeah, just tell them that you respect their opinion on something and ask them a question about it, and yeah, they will definitely get onto their soapbox and never shut up. I mean, it's yeah, it has its downsides, but you definitely won't be talking about drinking anymore.
Right. I like that rather than arguing with them or going back and
Yeah, and
forth. Yeah.
I mean, we also talk a lot about the way you phrase it, because
Mhm.
one of the things that I always like to say is, I'm not drinking at the moment and it seems to be working out for me, because it comes across then as being a lot less aggressive. If you
Mhm.
say, I don't drink, that's a finite and definite thing that you have said. And
Mm.
what we know from the statistics is about 72% of drinkers want to drink less. So part of the reason why they're kind of being a bit aggressive about you is because you're showing them up. You're putting them into a bad light. They actually want to be like you, but they're not. So they're a bit kind of annoyed. So if you kind of make it sound a little bit less casual, like, oh, it's just at the moment that I'm not drinking, and it's no big thing, then people tend not to feel you kind of butting up against their ego.
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
obviously, if you walk in and go, well, I don't drink and you guys are all mugs for drinking, then you are going to find it
You're
on your hands.
inviting
So
trouble.
we work a lot with people about finding that right way of phrasing it, because that often can kind of steer the conversation in a more gentle way anyway.
Absolutely, absolutely. My motto is change your words, change your world, and I can see that what you just shared with us could be very, very effective. Um, we have been talking about this in terms of personal and the professional impact. For those who are listening, who are, people leaders, entrepreneurs, folks in charge, how can organizations support their employees, their teams in making healthier choices regarding alcohol consumption? I mean, we've already talked about not having the open bar, Christmas party, but are there other ways that they can help?
Yeah, so I mean, one, yeah, absolutely. Don't run your events so that they are only about alcohol. You
Mhm,
know, like genuinely, most people don't mind if there is alcohol, but if it is only about alcohol, then all of the people that don't drink are going to be very, very bored, and there are more and more of them these days. So, do you really want to risk 25% of your employees, that because that's the number you're going to be offending if you're only having events that revolve around alcohol? So
mhm,
sure, have something to drink, but make sure there's a meal, or make sure there's some other entertainment going on at the same time, so it's a bit more inclusive. I always think, that it is a massive failing these days if you don't have decent non-alcoholic alternatives, because there
agreed.
are so many out there. If you're just, sticking some elderflower cordial out for me, I am going to be quite disappointed, because you can do a little bit better. So yes, you can do things around the events, absolutely, but I think there's a deeper thing that businesses can do, and the great news is that they're getting there. They really are almost there. So many businesses now, they're so focused on their employee well-being.
Mhm,
Look, I know you don't get into businesses to, it's not a charity. It doesn't work like that. It's not altruistic. They've figured out that if they look after their employees, then their employees are more productive and they have better
yes.
relationships. And, it genuinely impacts the bottom line. That's why
Mhm,
so many companies are investing in employee well-being. They've also done the same maths on mental health. They've realized that, employees are going to have mental health problems, and if they can support them through that, they will, reduce healthcare costs, they will reduce
mhm,
absenteeism, all of those great things. They've worked that out for well-being, and they've worked that out for mental health. All they really need to do is make that final link and realize that one of the key determinants of your well-being is how much you drink, and most mental health conditions are in some way tied to alcohol. So it's just building alcohol into that part of the conversation. A lot of companies are currently a bit scared about talking about it, and we
mhm.
just need to be a bit open. Because 20 years ago, everyone was scared about talking about mental health.
Right.
Now it's much more, acceptable and easy thing to talk about.
Gotcha, and I suspect some are scared because the leadership, owners, whomever is in charge has not yet made, the transformation that they need to make, and it's a little hard to talk about something and promote something you're not willing to do yourself. But at the larger companies, they, like you said, they've got EAP, all types of resources. You get points and prizes if you take the wellness journey. And so, yes, you're right. There are changes being made, and we can always do better. So that's why I like that you talk about the increase in productivity, and the impact on your triple or quadruple bottom line is very, very positive in supporting your team, your employees in this effort. Before we go, Duncan, tell us more about the services you offer, your book, and how listeners can find you online.
So my latest book is called Real Men Quit, and it's for men. Yeah, it's basically, there's not a lot of good writing out there
Mhm,
about sobriety for men. So I thought I'd do something which had a lot of really bad jokes in it, and had a lot of Star Wars and James Bond and the Terminator. So it is a very, very man book. So if you're a man and you want to sort of consider your drinking, then it's great for you. However, if you know a man who might needs to dial back his drinking, and let's face it, we all know at least one, possibly several,
mhm.
it is the book for them. So yeah, that's available on Amazon, and very easy to spell. So just stick Real Men Quit into Amazon, it will come up. Getting in touch with me in general is a bit difficult, because you have to be able to spell Bhaskaran Brown, and most people can't even pronounce it. So to get round that, I would like to offer your listeners a little bit of a freebie, just to make it easy for them to find me. If they put getover.uk, that's getover.uk, into Google, it'll take them to a bit of my website, and there you can download a PDF or a Kindle version of my first book, Get Over Indulgence. So that's getover.uk, and that does take you to a bit of our website. So From there, you can find out about all of the stuff that we do. You can find me on the socials. We're pretty busy on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. So if you want to
Mhm.
get in touch, please do. You know, I hope it shows, but I love talking about this sort of stuff. I do it all day. And if you've got any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. And if I can't help you, I am pretty confident I can point you in the direction of somebody who can.
Very good, very good. We will definitely have those links in the show notes, getover.uk, as well as to Real Men Quit. Thank you for writing a manly book for men. I'm looking at the cover right now. Very, very manly. So we
Thank
know
you.
how important that is, whether it's shampoo, soap, or a book. So I appreciate you reaching out to our brethren around the world with this great information and for the shining example you've set by turning things around for you and your family. Duncan Bhaskaran, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. And thank you, listeners, for your time and support of this woman owned indie podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, and share for more like this. Until next time, be safe and be well. Thank you.